All right, the Redskins, Over the Hill gang, and just alumni. They had a great event out at FedExField a couple of weeks ago, and you know, we got a chance to talk to some of those guys. And the Over the Hill gang, I think they had a great defense. They were run by George Allen, and let's hear what some of those guys had to say about when they played for the Redskins.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed playing for Coach Allen, mainly because of his defensive system, and mainly because we controlled it on the field. We didn't have microphones in our helmets. We didn't have anybody talking to us. We called the defenses right there on the field. We could audibilize anything at any time, and everybody knew what they were supposed to do in every defense, and it was just a lot of fun to work that way.
We were considered defensive generals together, so we spent a lot of time studying the opponents, but Chris could always anticipate what the next play was going to be. And sometimes he'd be accused of jamming the quarterback signals. We just knew their offense better than they knew it themselves sometimes.
All of those guys on George Allen's defense, from Pat Fisher to Brig Owens to Chris, they were called the generals. They were George's generals. They were very, very smart. And so they're the kind of guys that they weren't the biggest, they weren't the strongest, and they weren't the fastest, but they were sure as heck the brightest defensive guys in the league. And while you might get some plays on them in the beginning of the game, by the second half they'd figure out how to pick your pocket, and we Redskins always scored on defense, unlike this defense. The Redskins always scored because those guys were so smart. They would figure out the offensive side of the ball, and then they'd start to take the ball away.
We just had a massive array of defenses. And you'd be amazed when you line up defensively and you're in a little different position than you were from the last 2 or 3 times, and that quarterback's looking, and he starts thinking now, but yet we can run the same stuff from different lineups like that. But that was the fun of it, and we just all thoroughly enjoyed it. And plus we liked the tag of being the Overhill gang. Bunch of old guys just trying to have fun, and we kind of related with the everyday fan. And we wanted to win not only for ourselves and the coaches, but for the city itself.
All right, the Over the Hill gang, and those guys really played some great defense, and they were playing for George Allen. But one thing that Chris was telling me, and so was Brig Owens, is that they didn't have a mic in their helmet. I mean, once they learned that defense and learned the game plan for that game. I mean, they called everything themselves out there on the field, and they didn't rely on George Allen. They knew what he wanted, though.
Right. Well, back in those days, the players, both on offense and defense, called their own signals, and it was Brig Owens, Chris Hanburger, Kenny Houston, Pat Fisher, those guys, defensive line, Ron McDowell. Like these guys are saying, there were some very, very smart players out there, and they knew how to out-scheme the offenses, and they also created a lot of points, turnovers, and there was a lot of cohesiveness on that team, offense and defense. And that's something we don't see as much today because the players are moving in and out. The Redskins could develop that over the years. That's what they really need to stabilize this team. They need the roster to remain the same, and so it could happen, but there was just those players remain together.
Is that kind of like what's going on over with the Ravens with their defense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they've been together for a while.
Yeah, they've been together.
All the good
and the leaders are still there,
But even if you don't have that, these guys, they talked about, and I was listening to them as far as the relationships. Because what happened is the offensive line, the defensive line used to spend time after practice playing cards or doing anything, developing that relationship with each other instead of going their separate ways after practice was over. Most of these guys, when practice is over, they're gone. So it's not those relationships that's built that, that carries on the field.
All right.
Right. The thing about George Allen, which obviously a number of them referred to, is that he would try and know the opponent better than that team knows itself, okay? And he transferred all of that information to his players. So that's one major way they would try to outsmart the opposition. And George Allen, I mean, his life revolved around football. It was 24/7. He was watching tape all the time. And he was a great special teams coach as well.
But like you said, Marvin, maybe they're getting away from the things that made them understand a defense better, because you've got, like you said, the mics and everything and the helmets and so forth, where they may not necessarily have to learn as much as they did because they had to memorize all that stuff before.
And the defensive players are on the field. They have a better feel for the game than somebody up in the booth, right?
Exactly.
And so maybe that's why on third downs, big third down plays, they came through. Because they had more of a feel for, hey, what's this guy going to do on third down or whatever.
And what did George say? They were always changing the defense. And Chris Hanburger said, even though that defense was this, that it could be 5 or 6 different ways that you can change up that defense to fit what the offense was giving you. And that maybe is something we're not seeing these days.
All right.